your true fans become your marketing arm. And again, I want to use this example. It hasn't helped that band Humphreys McGee, but I've heard a lot of Humphreys McGee songs because this guy. I mean, I only know their name because of this guy who's one of the true fans and is one of my friends. Well, the same thing happens in our world. Your true fans will talk about you quite a bit. They'll tell other people about you. They'll get people into your free groups. They'll get people to buy from you. They'll send people your way. Etc.
Welcome to the Online Genius Podcast, where host and renegade thinking beer brewing lawyer turned online entrepreneur Bobby Klinck proves that building and protecting your online genius doesn't have to be rocket science. Bobby and his expert guests break down online marketing and the legal stuff so you can stop sweating the small stuff and get back to building your amazing business. Now, here's your host, Bobby Klinck.
Hey there. Welcome to episode 81 of the Online Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I am really, really excited for today's episode. Now, I know I say that pretty much every episode, but this is one that I'm kind of giddy about because it's something that really follows naturally from episode 79, where I talked about kind of the power of building human connections. It's also a concept that really kind of encapsulates, I guess you could call it the secret of my success. I don't think it's really a secret, but the key to my success over the last year and a half. But also, I hope it's a concept that will be inspiring to you and give you hope that this is doable. This is something that anybody and everybody can do. Today, we're going to be talking about the concept of 1,000 true fans. Now, it's a concept that was originally proposed by a guy named Kevin Kelly, who's one of the founding, I think he was like the founding executive editor of Wiredmagazine. And he originally wrote this piece back in 2018 about the concept of 1,000 true fans. But he's kind of revised it, and he later summarized the concept this way. To be a successful creator, you don't need millions. You don't need millions of dollars or millions of customers, millions of clients, or millions of fans. To make a living as a craftsperson, photographer, musician, designer, author, animator, app maker, entrepreneur, or inventor, you need only thousands of true fans. That's kind of a direct quote that is a direct quote from him. And I think it's a concept that is inspiring because it makes it less daunting to think about how you're going to build your online business. But I'm going to be honest with you, it also requires some work. Now, I am a believer that finding, attracting, and cultivating your 1,000 true fans is the most important work you need to be doing as an online entrepreneur. It's above creating products. It's above marketing. It is above everything else. Finding, attracting, and cultivating those true fans is the most important work you could be doing and need to be doing. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I want to help you with this concept, and I want to help you with, thinking it through, and maybe it will shift your mindset about things in an important way. But before we get there, this week's episode, as always, is brought to you by the Online Genius Podcast community on Facebook. Now, I love coming to you. I love, talking with you in this podcast by providing information to you. But if you listen to episode 79, you understand I want to connect with you. I don't want to talk at you. And the only real way I can connect with you is if we can talk back and forth. And the easiest way for us to do that is in a community. And so that's why I have the Facebook community. It's free. There are resources, I answer questions. There are a bunch of other amazing entrepreneurs in the group who actually often chime in with answers, and I don't even have to if we're talking about a marketing thing, but often I'll give my 2 cents too. But there are people in there who are accountants and can provide answers on accounting questions and CPAs and all of those different things, and marketing and Facebook ad. Whatever it is, there are people in there who can help. And so it's a great community, and it's a community of people who are kind of trying to do this the right way. They're not in this for a get-rich-quick scheme. They really want to help people and serve people first. And so that's where I like to kind of connect with people, spend time with people, etc. It's absolutely free. You can join by heading over to youronlinegenius.com/community. Again, youronlinegenius.com/community. It'll take you to the Facebook group. Make sure to answer the questions because I like to, know who I'm connecting with. And, then I'll let you in and you can start to, connect and engage with everyone in the group. So with that, let's dive in to the concept of 1,000 true fans. Now, first, before we talk about the power of it and kind of how to do it, I want to talk about the concept if you're not familiar with it. Now, it really began as a thought experiment. Kevin Kelly had this idea and he said, look, if you had 1,000 people who would pay you $100 per year, you'd have a six-figure business. So if you could cultivate a following of fans who would be willing to pay you $100 each and every year, you would have, this amazing business that gets you to six figures. Now, again, maybe six figures isn't your goal. Maybe you have a higher goal, etc. But the concept was that's really how it started. And it started from this concept. Again, he originated back in 2008 that this was the reality of the new online economy where we don't have to go through middlemen, right? We don't have to go through someone to distribute or to sell, etc. And again, you could think of it really from the context of the music industry and you really start to understand it, right? In the old days in the music industry, you had to have a record label and that record label had to pick you up. And then I have friends in the business and I know, for example, for a record that sells for $10, they were getting maybe $1. So you start thinking about it, they had to have the middleman because otherwise people couldn't find them, etc. But it also meant they got very little of the money from their product. The online economy is very different, right? Because we can connect with people all over the world who are interested in the same things as us, who might want to follow us, who might want, what we have to offer. And although it makes the most sense in the music industry, and I'm going to use that as an example here, just because I think it's really easy to put into your mind. Plus, I know people who I can use as an examples here, but it doesn't just apply there. But in the original telling, the way Kevin Kelly described it, a true fan is someone who will buy anything you have to offer. So again, going back to the music context, it's the people who will buy the greatest hits record, even though they already own all the other records. So they literally already own all the music that's on the greatest hits, but they'll still buy it anyway. It's my friend who will go to, there's this band called Humphreys McGee. If they're playing within 60 miles of Washington, D.C., he will be there. And this is like multiple times a year, multiple times a quarter. It seems like he's going to see this band play. And so that's a true fan. That's the power of them. And when you start thinking about that, you start to see it. Now, what I want you to understand is although the concept, maybe you can visualize it the most in the concept of a music act or an artist or something like that, it applies to entrepreneurs too. You as an entrepreneur can cultivate that same kind of, rabid fan base of people who really want to be in your presence. They want your stuff. They want to learn from you. They want to buy from you. And that is, in a sense, the power of things. And so now I want to talk about the power, right? What is the power of these true fans? Now, the most obvious one, and this is really what Kevin Kelly was talking about, is they buy from you, theoretically anything you have to offer. To use a Jerry Maguire quote, you had me at hello. In other words, you say, hey, I've got this thing. Yes, I want it. You don't even have to finish what you're saying. They want to buy it. And if you're not there yet, I understand that you may say, no, that'll never happen. And I kind of thought that too. But I will tell you there is power in that. In my recent launches, I have heard from people who basically said they were waiting for me to launch something. They were waiting. They're like, when can I buy? When can I buy? When can I buy? When can I buy? And it's not because they necessarily think my product, I mean, they do, but it's not like the product is one of a kind. It's I want to buy from Bobby. And so I had it happen with my template library kind of non-launch launch, which I talked about a few episodes ago. I had that same concept come up where some people literally said they were waiting to buy my template library rather than buying templates from someone else. But I also just recently, as I'm recording this, it was last week, I did a founding members launch for what is going to be my first foray outside of the legal stuff. I'm creating a membership that is kind of about this concept I'm talking about helping people really connect with their fans, find their true fans, etc. And I ran a founding members launch and I sent emails and I basically said, look, I don't even know exactly what this is. Here's my vision. Here's what I think it is, but I don't have anything yet. It's not coming for a while, but I'd love for you to pay me money to become a founding member. And now you think about that. Obviously, that's something where it's a heck of an ask. And I had a lot of people jump at the opportunity who said yes. Basically saying, I don't know what it is, but if you're selling it, if you're making it, I want to be part of it. Those are true fans, right? That's the power of it. I was able to generate revenue on this thing for a product I haven't created yet that I couldn't even necessarily really put into words of what the offer was going to be. But these people trusted in me and said they wanted it. And it was a lot more than $100 for the year. So that's the power. And you can get there too. But it's not just, and this is where, in a sense, I think Kevin Kelly's article on it, talks about that. But there's a lot of power beyond them actually buying from you. Your true fans become your marketing arm. And again, I want to use this example. It hasn't helped that band Humphreys McGee, but I've heard a lot of Humphreys McGee songs because this guy. I mean, I only know their name because of this guy who's one of their true fans and is one of my friends. Well, the same thing happens in our world. Your true fans will talk about you quite a bit. They'll tell other people about you. They'll get people into your free groups. They'll get people to buy from you. They'll send people your way. etc. I will tell you that I have people coming to my free community, that free, community on Facebook every day. And one of the questions I just ask where people heard about me because I like to know. And I will hear on a regular basis that they heard someone else mention me in another Facebook group and talk about how great the group was. And again, that is the power of having these true fans. So all of a sudden I got someone for free into my Facebook group, didn't have to pay to reach them, didn't have to pay to bring them into my world, didn't have to do any of that. Because I have fans out there who are, in a sense, my virtual marketing arm that are doing it for me. You can have the same thing. You can have the same kind of power if you take the time to cultivate your true fans. And again, maybe it's not a Facebook group, maybe it's not that, but you'll have people who willingly want to send people your way just to serve these other people. I have people do the same thing. Like, we'll send people to my products and they're like, I don't want an affiliate commission because you are so generous and they are connected with me. So they just want to, it's like their way of thanking me, but also thanking other people that they know who need my services. Again, that's the power of true fans. They're going to do those things for you because they truly believe that you are fantastic and can serve people. They will also become your defenders. If you are to the point that you have Facebook ads up, you will have people who will say mean things on those ads. People don't like ads because they feel like they're being sold to, and people will say, mean things, and it just happens. It's happened to me multiple times on my Facebook ads, and I don't want to say invariably, but pretty often when I go and maybe I see this comment, if I see it right away, maybe no one's responded, but if it's later, often I'll find that someone who is one of my true fans has responded, has said, you're nuts, get out of here. But let me talk about it from my perspective on the other end. And again, this is me being a friend of someone, but I was on a webinar for someone I respect quite a bit, who I know provides a ton of value. She was running a webinar for something. And if you've been on a webinar, there's a little bit of, introduction at the beginning, etc. But she actually did get to content that was useful pretty quickly. And about 25 minutes in, someone in the comments just starts complaining that there was no value, etc. I chimed in and said, shut the hell up. I don't know what you're talking about. Bye. This person provided a ton of value, but I wasn't the only one. There were other people that I was seeing doing the same thing. And it's not about shouting people down or silencing people. But again, if you as an entrepreneur have those people who you know have your back, guess what? You're going to feel a lot better. It's going to take the burden off your shoulders. Number one, you're hopefully not going to feel bad when someone says something mean about you, because it'll immediately be followed by some of your fans responding and saying, no, that's not true. But more importantly, you don't have to feel like you have to respond. Now, I don't think you have to respond anyway, but it definitely takes that burden off of you. So, I mean, these are some of the value that comes from having these true fans, because you really are going to, you're going to have buyers, you're going to have marketers, you're going to have defenders. They're all of those things wrapped into one. And so that to me is the power. And that's why in our space, I believe that the true fan concept is even more important than like in the music industry space. Because, right, I mean, yes, there are haters and all that, but in that space of creatives, really the concept is, hey, if they'll buy everything you produce, you can make a living, and because they're going to buy it. In our space, it's that, but even more and more powerful and more. They will get people to really do things from us. So now I do want to talk about how many do you need? And although it's the concept of 1,000 true fans, you don't even need 1,000 true fans. You just don't. I do want to start though. I hope you get this by the way I'm describing true fans. I'm not talking about the number of people on your list, and I'm not talking about your social media following. This is something deeper, right? Your true fans are a much smaller percentage than your total list or your total following, et cetera. We're talking about your ride or die fans. But the good news is you definitely don't need millions of them. And in our world, you're not going to even need 1,000 of them, is my true belief. I'll honestly tell you that depending on your product mix, I bet you don't even need 100 of them. If you could hit 100 true fans who are those kind of die hard, will buy anything you put in front of them, you are going to have a very, very successful business. And I want to walk through the math. I want to walk through kind of, this is a thought experiment, but I'm going to walk through it and give you a sense of it, right? Because think of the true fans as maybe your 1%ers. They're probably a smaller group than that. So yes, they are themselves going to be potentially a very, big piece of the pie, but that's not it. But let's use the number 100. If you had 100 true fans who will buy anything from you, literally everything you offer, they're like, I'm in, I want it. Then I bet you have hundreds more each year who will buy one signature product from you for, say, $1,000. And again, I can use my product mix as an example. So if I have 100 people who would basically say, yes, I will buy anything you have to offer, then I shouldn't have a difficult time finding 100, maybe 200 people each year to pay $1,000 to buy my template library. Well, think about that. That's $100,000 or $200,000 from those people who will buy that signature product who aren't necessarily my true fans. But if I have 100 true fans, then I'm also going to have probably 1,000 who will buy a single template from me. Again, if you have these lower price products, and for me, a template is $100 on the low end up to $250. So just use $150. If I have 1,000 people do that, that's another $150,000. So again, with 100 true fans, I should have no problem making $500,000 a year in revenue. And that's without spending a ton of money trying to get fans or anything like that. That's from the fans, from just kind of doing the work to try to find my true fans, which is going to involve some work. It's going to involve some spending of money, no question. But in that process of trying to find and cultivate true fans, I'm going to come onto other people's radar screens, and they're going to become a casual fan who will buy something, but not everything. And there's power in that. And so when you start thinking about it, again, I'm going to continue to call it the 1,000 true fans. And if we could get to 1,000 true fans who are like those raving fans want to buy everything that we have to offer, look, if you get there, let's be honest, you'll have a 7-figure business. But you don't have to get there. You need to get to the point, I believe, if you can say, I want 100 true fans in our space with what we do, that number will get you a multiple six-figure business that gives you the freedom you want, gives you all kinds of power and all of those things. So that's a number. And so I say that because I hope that's inspiring to you, right? You don't have to think about these big name entrepreneurs who, have, email lists of, 300,000 people. You don't have to get there. Now, again, like I said, we're not talking list size. But you don't have to think I have to have, thousands or tens of thousands of raving fans. No, find 100 of them. If you can find and cultivate 100 true fans, 100 raving fans, I honestly believe, I challenge you to do that and not have a multiple six-figure business. Because you will. Just because the halo effects and all of those other things. I'm doing this episode because I really think it's something that is getting lost in the online world. When you look at the online space of what people are teaching, of what's going on out there, you're going to find a lot of people teaching you about how to create a product, whether it's an online course, a membership, a mastermind, a group coaching program, a high ticket offer, etc. I mean, there's a lot of people teaching that, like, how do you create a product? And then they often will teach you about how to market that as well. And the thing is, I've been in so many of these programs where I see that other people who are in there have plopped down thousands of dollars, but they have zero following. Now, one of these, I was in one that was about creating a high ticket offer. I mean, you had people who had like no website and no following, nothing. And it had plopped down like, and I don't remember the price, but it was, close to $10,000 to join that program. And I saw that and I said, what in the world were these people thinking? But even in, the courses that I see from a lot of the people who I respect highly, and they're not marketing it this way. They are not telling people, hey, you don't need a following. I'm going to give you business in 30 days. They're not doing that, but they're teaching about how to create products, a course, a membership. And these are $2,000 courses. And I'll see people in there who have no website, no following. And I think to myself, these people are putting the cart before the horse. And I get it because a lot of us think, well, I've got to have a product. I've got to know what I'm going to sell. And so I understand why people do that. And I'll tell you, quite honestly, there are the not so reputable people in the space who are, making it seem as though all you have to do is have a product and you're going to make a bunch of money, or all you have to do is follow their secrets and you're going to make millions. And so those people who I think are the not so reputable people, it ends up kind of rubbing off on the community, and then just kind of people in the space start to think maybe you can do that. And so they join these other courses from people who aren't even, saying that. But I see it all the time. But then I also see there are a lot of people out there who are teaching you how to get followers or how to build your list, right? And that's an important piece. I'm not going to say that that's not part of it. But a follower or a person on your email list isn't a true fan, right? I mean, I could get, if I wanted to, I can get 100,000 people on my email list like tomorrow. I could go buy a list and add them, because here in the United States, you're allowed to do that. Or I could pay, I forget what they're called. I mean, you pay people to send their list to yours, but they're just, they're just trash followers. Yeah, I could get followers for 10 cents, but they're trash. They're worthless. And yes, I could, do all of the crazy following, unfollowing stuff on Instagram and those things and get, followings like that. Candidly, I had a former social media person who did that for me on Twitter. I've got 30,000 followers on Twitter and or maybe it's 25 now, I don't know. And Twitter is a wasteland for me. It's useless because they're followers, not fans. It's a vanity metric. Even the people who are teaching you how to do it right, a lot of them aren't teaching you how to connect and cultivate relationships with the people who become your followers, who get on your list. Now, again, there are exceptions. I want to be clear about that. And I follow those people who are exceptions. But the problem is they are having to fight against the noise. Like, I will see them. I mean, they're doing thought reversal posts and videos that are basically saying, quit focusing on numbers. But like, we have to say that because everyone is so focused on those things. And then there are the people out there who are teaching and preaching that you have to automate and delegate everything pretty much from the outset. They're just saying, yes, you shouldn't be doing this. It's almost as if they're telling people that connecting with actual fans as humans is a bad thing. And so you just think about it, that kind of warps our perspective, because we say we shouldn't have to do that. We should just be able to put this on autopilot and go to evergreen funnels immediately. And we're not going to go on evergreen. And, again, they can pitch it one way, but realistically, people are talking about going evergreen from the outset. It's not because they're saying that's the best way to serve. It's that way you don't have to do this and you don't have to. No. If you want to have stuff available all the time because that's the best way to serve your people, that's fine. But if you're doing it because you don't want to have to take the time to connect, to build, to build and really provide value to people, it's not going to work. So the problem is that although we actually, as online entrepreneurs, have an amazing opportunity because the online world provides us this way to create true fans in a way that just wasn't possible forever, and to reach people and to create amazing businesses that are sustainable and that will last in the long term by cultivating our true fans. A lot of what we're being taught will tell you not to do that, will actually be counterproductive because it will get you focused on things other than what you should be focusing on. My belief, and this is a steadfast belief, is that you need to put cultivating your true fans as the first thing on your priority list. Now, I'm not saying you can't sell to people. I'm not saying that you can't develop a product, but the first thing you need to do is cultivate a fan base. You've got to do that before you start really being successful. Now, I didn't do this right initially. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I first created a product. I created a course called Safeguard Your Online Genius. Now, if you don't know, the name for that course was the genesis for my brand name, Your Online Genius. So although people think that Your Online Genius, sometimes they think that I was saying I'm the online genius. No, it was actually from this course where I was saying, hey, you safeguard your online genius. But no one knows that because the course was a flop. Because I created a course, I spent, I don't know how much, time I spent, but I put together what I thought was a beautiful course with all kinds of training, all kinds of information. I had, the templates, I had everything put together into a course, and I created it, and I had, next to no following. Most of the following I had were people who downloaded things from me and weren't hearing from me, and they had downloaded things that actually weren't even relevant to what the course was, and so it didn't work. I then decided, hey, I can solve this with Facebook ads. So I spent $10,000 on Facebook ads to get people in the door. And guess how many of them bought from me? One. And she asked for a refund on day 29 with my 30-day refund policy, never having looked at the product. So I did it wrong because I bought into this notion that I didn't have to. I had a product. I created a good product and people come. No, it doesn't work that way. So that was my first foray really into trying to do this. And things shifted for me when I said, wait a minute, stop. And again, I can't claim to be brilliant and to have had a grand plan on this, but it was when I actually said, let me focus on building my fans first. And again, I wasn't thinking about it in terms of fans. But when I started to do the things to cultivate fans, to connect with people, to do all of that, all of a sudden, things changed. That's when people started wanting to buy from me. That's when I got to the point that I said, this thing works. And so I know the power of it. And so that's why I'm, up on a soapbox, I guess, here about this. And it's also candidly because I see so many people who end up in overwhelm because they bought into the philosophy that you don't need a following. You can solve it with fill in the blank, whether it's ads or whatever. Maybe this is going to make me a pariah among some of the people in the online world. I don't believe you should pay money to find out how to build a product if you don't yet have at least some sense of a following. Now, you don't necessarily have to be to the point of having 100 true fans or 1,000 true fans or whatever, some raving fans before you start that process. But I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to have to build that fan base before you're going to successfully launch an online product. Now, I want to be clear. There are going to be unicorns out there, right? There are going to be people who have a product that just because of what it is just going to sell. But that's not most of us. Most of us people have so many different options. They're going to buy from you because they like you, because they connect with you. And so that means you have to cultivate the relationships. So that's kind of the sorry, not sorry moment here. That's the bad news. The good news is you don't need millions. You only need, I think 100 true fans. The bad news is you need 100 true fans. And again, not 100 people on your list, 100 true fans. So let's talk for a minute about how you can go about the process of doing this. Now, this is a huge topic, right? And there's no way I could cover it in a single podcast. I want to say it's not easy. You can't delegate, automate, or templatize this process of connecting with your fans. You just can't. You've got to do the work. You've got to show up, and it has to be you. This isn't something I see these conversations happening all the time. There are things you can automate. There are things you can have your VA do, but you have to be the one to connect. Your VA is not going to create true fans. You are. And so there's work that has to be done there. Now, if you haven't checked out episode 79, where I talk about creating human connections, definitely go back there. It is a great place to start. But in my mind, there's kind of 4 parts. You can think of it as steps, stages, whatever, to creating true fans. The first one is that you have to develop an attractive, kind of magnetic personality. And that may sound like, oh, that's a big topic. Well, it is, right? And you may say, well, I can't do that. Well, trust me when I say that you can. Before I started my transition in February of 2018 or so, I was not magnetic. I was anything but. I was the no man. I was the guy who was always like, there's a problem, the negative guy, the guy who said it can't be done. And people just didn't really want to hang out with me. But I made a change, and I was conscious about it. I started becoming a cheerleader. I started becoming positive about things. I started working on these things, and that was a big part of the shift. But there are other parts to becoming magnetic. You have to become a storyteller. You have to know your stories, things like your origin story and things like your signature stories. And again, too big of a topic to go into in this podcast. But what I'll tell you is, if you can start to be someone who tells stories that are relatable, that people can really connect with you, that's going to make a huge difference. And you've seen this a lot. A lot of entrepreneurs are talking about authenticity, and this is like real authenticity, not fake, not curated, but you really kind of talk about things that are going on with you, your failures in the past, your struggles, how you've overcome them, etc. When you do that, people will relate to you. My first clue on this was like a weird little thing, but candidly, the first episode of this podcast that was like, a big hit and like had a ton of downloads above any others was when I did an episode talking about the results of my first big launch. I say big, but it was the first what I would call successful launch. It wasn't a 6-figure launch. I think I did 27,000. I don't remember the number, but I talked about what I did wrong and the things that I messed up and all that. And people loved it because it was relatable, because people said, oh, I can see myself doing that. Right. So, that's an example. So you have to become magnetic, and that means learn your stories, cultivate traits and personalities and ways of being that are going to make you attractive to people. And you got to do that work. And that means, think about being a giving person, think about being a supportive person, think about being a positive person. When you start doing those things, it will make a huge change. Now, once you've kind of done that work, and again, you can do all these kind of simultaneously, but you really got to nail that one. Then you got to find your true fans. Now, a few episodes ago, I did an episode about the Dream 100. I think it was episode 77. That is a big piece of this. You have to find where your people are because you have to be able to reach them. But then also, it's not just find them, it's find them and investigate them. Really listen, understand. That work is important. So that's kind of the second piece. Then you have to attract them. And you can do that through social media. You can do that with your email list, etc. I've done some episodes. I did an episode about email lists, and then I did an episode about my Facebook strategy. I think that one's episode 66, but we'll link it up in the show notes. Those are all about ways to kind of attract people, get them into your world, and do it organically. You can do it with paid ads. You can do whatever you want, but when you take the time to really attract people the right way, that will help. And then the last piece, and this is the piece that a lot of people miss, is the nurturing. It's nurturing. It's connecting. It's not doing what a lot of people do. A lot of people attract people to their email list, for example, during a launch. But then if the people don't buy, they don't hear from them for months on end. I mean, I had this happen to me so often. Like, I'll get emails from people who I haven't heard from in 6 months, and I'm on their email list. It's like, oop, they must be in a launch phase. And sure enough, like the only time I hear from them is when they want me to buy something from them. Guess how many of those people I bought from? None. I mean, why would I buy from them? If I didn't buy the first time and I haven't heard from you in 6 months, why am I going to buy the second time? I'm not going to. So you've got to spend time nurturing. And so that's, it has to do with your list of connecting with, sending emails to your list, etc. But it also has to do with other things like, engaging with people in Facebook groups, finding where they are and spending time there and actually building connections and doing things like having a secondary lead magnet where they signed up for one thing, but you give them something else later down the line. So they're like, wow, this guy gives me even more stuff. It's things like that when you start doing those kinds of things and engaging with people and connecting with them, that's where someone goes from a person on your list to a true fan. So again, what I'll tell you is you've got to do all these pieces, but kind of the key, like where you're going to actually make your money, if you want to think about it that way, is in the attraction and the nurturing phase. Now, the work before that, you've got to do to know how to do that, but how you attract them. So again, is it possible to attract people based on a Facebook ad and nurture them? Yes, definitely. So I do that. A lot of people come on my list from a Facebook ad. But with them, I have to do a lot more nurturing. Then there are the people who came to me because one of my other true fans has recommended them to me. Guess what? I still nurture those people, obviously, but I don't have to nurture them as much because they already have a positive opinion of me. Or maybe it's someone who has seen me give a ton in a Facebook group, and then they get on my list like after seeing me do that for months on end. Well, guess what? I've already nurtured them. So the nurture after they get on my list isn't as important. But that's the thing. It's this kind of cycle of goodness. It's this virtuous cycle of cultivating relationships and connecting with people. That's where the magic happens. So again, I know maybe this is leaving you wanting more, but again, it's too big of a topic to talk about all in one episode. That's why I'm kind of, linking you back to and giving you references to these other episodes like episode 79 and episode 77. And I think it's episode 66 where I talk about my Facebook group strategy. But the concept is if you go and check those out, they give you a sense of the kinds of things that I'm doing and that you can do to start to build these connections. And when you start doing that, that's when you'll have your true fans. That's how you'll find them. That's how you'll nurture them. And that's how they will go from, someone on your list to a true fan. And so I commend you to do that. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is you just have to put your focus on creating your fan base first. If you focus on it, you'll figure out. I mean, you can find the tactics, you can find the strategies. If you say to yourself, my most important goal is to create true fans, I think you'll have no trouble doing it. So that's my call to action today is do that. Make that shift and you will be better off. That's my take on the 1,000 true fans concept. I again stress to you, I can say unquestionably that the fact that I have cultivated true fans is the reason why I've been successful. And so I hope you'll take the time to do the same. So that's it. I'll see you back here next week for episode 82 of the Online Genius Podcast. Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to the Online Genius Podcast. Make sure to tune in next week for more great tips, tricks, and strategies to help you build and protect your online genius.